I used to think lies were loud, that they came with shaking voices, darting eyes, obvious cracks. I was wrong about that too. The most dangerous lies are quiet. They slip into your life slowly, dress themselves as necessity, and before you realize it, they start speaking for you. By the time I came home, my lies had learned how to breathe. Nick had hung a welcome home banner across our front porch. Bright colors. Big letters. The kind of thing neighbors noticed. The kind of thing that announced happiness to the world. Welcome home, Tessa. I stood there for a moment, keys in my hand, staring at it like it was mocking me. 3 months ago, I'd left as a respected doctor, a wife my husband trusted without question, a mother my children believed in. Now I was coming back, as someone else entirely. Nick stepped outside when he heard the car door shut. He smiled, that familiar, steady smile that had anchored me for 16 years. The smile that used to make me feel safe. Seeing it that day felt like punishment. "You're finally home," he said, pulling me into a hug. His arms wrapped around me, solid and warm. For a split second, I almost told him everything. Almost let the truth spill out right there on the driveway. Instead, I hugged him back and let the lie settle deeper. "I missed you," I said. That part was true, which made it worse. Maddie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. 15 years old and already too observant for her own good. She took one look at me and frowned. "You look awful, Mom." Nick shot her a warning look. Hey. But she wasn't wrong. My skin was dull. My body felt heavy. And beneath all of it, a constant unease twisted in my stomach. Not just sickness, but fear. 3 months overseas will do that, I said lightly. Will peeked out from behind her, clutching his Nintendo Switch, like a shield. He didn't say anything, but his eyes lingered on me longer than usual. Studying. Measuring. Children don't need explanations. They sense when something doesn't fit. That night, the house felt strange. Familiar, but wrong, like walking into a room where furniture has been moved just enough to throw you off balance. Nick unpacked my suitcase while I sat on the bed, watching him fold clothes I hadn't worn where I'd told him I'd been. "You okay?" he asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but nausea surged before words could form. I rushed to the bathroom and barely made it. Nick followed, concern etched across his face as he held my hair back. "Hey, what's going on?" I sat on the cold tile floor, shaking. I could feel it now. The chills, the fever creeping up my spine, the weight of consequences pressing down on me. "I think something's wrong," I whispered. I think I was exposed to something. That part was also true, just not the way he thought. Nick didn't hesitate. He never does when it comes to emergencies. Within an hour, we were back at Riverside General, the hospital where we'd built so much of our life. The irony tasted bitter. Colleagues avoided my eyes as I was escorted into isolation. I told myself it was protocol, that they were being professional, but I could feel it, the subtle shift, the unspoken questions. Lying alone in that sterile room, I stared at the ceiling while tests were run. Blood drawn. Swabs taken. Monitors beeping softly. For the first time in months, I was truly alone with my thoughts. I told myself it would pass. That it always does. I thought about the choices that had led me here, though I tried not to linger on them. Because once you start pulling at that thread, everything unravels. When the doctor came in the next morning, I searched her face for clues. She sat down slowly. "The good news," she said, "is that it's not Ebola. Or any hemorrhagic fever." Relief flooded me so fast, I almost laughed. Then she continued. "The other results are more complicated." My heart sank. "You've tested positive for chlamydia and gonorrhea." The room went silent. For a moment, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. "That's not possible," I said automatically. "There must be a mistake." She didn't argue. She didn't soften it. "The tests are definitive." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. This wasn't just exposure anymore. This wasn't just sickness. This was proof. Proof I couldn't explain away. Proof I couldn't control. When Nick was told, I wasn't there. And part of me was grateful for that. I didn't want to see his face when reality hit him. When he finally came to see me, his eyes were different. Not angry. Not yet. Distant. "How long?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. I couldn't. That silence said more than any confession ever could. They released me 3 days later with antibiotics and instructions to rest. Nick drove me home. The drive was quiet. The kind of quiet that stretches and suffocates. At home, I tried to slip back into routine like nothing had changed. I cooked dinner, asked the kids about school, smiled when Nick spoke to me. But something fundamental had shifted. He watched more, spoke less, asked fewer questions. That scared me more than shouting would have. At night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, replaying the past 3 months in my head. The first conversation with Alexis. The way she'd framed it as self-care. The flights. The hotels. Owen's laugh. The lies piling up until they felt normal. I told myself it wasn't really cheating at first. That it was temporary. That Nick would never know. That I deserved something just for myself. People always tell themselves that part. I didn't know yet that Nick wasn't the kind of man who ignored unanswered questions. I didn't know he was already searching for the truth. All I knew was that something had started moving beneath the surface. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. And soon it would come for me. The worst part wasn't that Nick stopped touching me. It was that he stopped asking. No questions about how I was feeling. No concern about the medication. No late-night conversations where he tried to fix things the way he always used to. He became polite, efficient, distant. And distance, I learned, is far more terrifying than anger. I told myself he needed time, that he was processing, that once the shock faded, we would talk. But days passed, and the silence only grew heavier. At work, I felt it too. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. Nurses who once joked with me suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. Doctors avoided my gaze, their expressions unreadable. Hospital gossip moves faster than any virus. I tried to pretend I didn't notice. I focused on paperwork, on routine, on anything that kept my mind from spiraling. But every time I checked my phone, dread curled tighter in my chest. Because Owen wasn't answering. When he finally did, his message was short and panicked. "Owen, something's wrong." Administration's asking questions. My hands shook as I typed back. "Me, about what?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Owen, about everything." That was when I knew. Whatever Nick had discovered, it was bigger than me. Bigger than Owen. Bigger than a single affair. The first time I noticed Nick watching me differently was over dinner. Maddie was talking about a school project. Will was half listening, half playing a game on his phone. Normal family noise filled the room. Nick set his fork down and looked at me. "Did you take many photos in Africa?" he asked casually. The question hit me like a slap. "No," I said quickly. Too quickly. "We were busy. Conditions weren't ideal." He nodded slowly. "Makes sense." Then he returned to his food. No follow-up. No suspicion. But my heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. That night, I lay awake replaying every detail of my lies. The fake stories I'd told the kids. The carefully curated photos I'd downloaded. The way I'd practiced sounding tired but fulfilled. I thought I'd been convincing. I hadn't realized Nick wasn't trying to catch me in a lie. He was verifying one. A week later, the rumor became real. Owen Grant had been suspended. The message came from a colleague, not Owen himself. Administrative leave, pending investigation. I locked myself in a bathroom stall and stared at my reflection. My face looked unfamiliar, pale, hollow-eyed, older. I told myself suspensions happen, that it could be about anything. But deep down, I knew better. That evening, I paced the bedroom while Nick read quietly on the couch. "There are rumors," I said carefully. "At the hospital." He didn't look up. Hospitals run on rumors. About some kind of ethics investigation. Still nothing. Just a calm page turn. "What if it affects me?" I asked. That made him pause. He finally looked at me, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp. How would it affect you? I opened my mouth.
Closed it.
I don't know, I said. People talk. He nodded. They always do. That was the moment something cold settled in my stomach. He knew. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. The gala invitation arrived 2 days later. Riverside General's annual event.
Doctors.
Administrators.
Press.
The entire medical community dressed up and pretending to be respectable. I stared at the envelope like it was a summons. I don't think I should go, I said that night. Nick adjusted his tie in the mirror. Why not? With the investigation, the rumors. Hiding makes people suspicious, he replied calmly. You've done nothing wrong. The words landed like a verdict. At the gala, I felt exposed from the moment we walked in. Every smile felt forced. Every glance felt knowing. Conversations hushed as we passed. I spotted Owen near the bar, already on his third drink. He looked unsteady, his confidence stripped down to nerves and desperation. Alexis was there too.
Composed.
Observant. Watching the room like a chessboard. I tried to stay close to Nick, clinging to the illusion of safety his presence once gave me. Then he stood up. I watched my husband walk toward the microphone with a calm purpose that made my blood run cold. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. When he introduced himself, my heart slammed so hard I could barely breathe. When he spoke about continuing education retreats, the room shifted. Whispers erupted. Heads turned. When he said my name, something inside me shattered. I didn't hear the rest clearly. Just fragments. Love parties. Blackmail. Portland. My wife. The humiliation was instant and total. Phones were out. People were recording. I saw colleagues staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. I couldn't stay. I pushed through the crowd, my vision blurring, my ears ringing. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Outside, the cold air hit my face, but it didn't help. Nothing could undo what had just happened. By the time I got home, my phone was exploding. Messages.
Calls.
Notifications. The lie I'd lived inside for months had collapsed in minutes. Nick came home later.
Calm.
Controlled.
Precise.
He laid out evidence on the kitchen table like a prosecutor. Bank statements. Messages. Photos. There was no point denying it. I cried. Begged. Explained. I talked about burnout. About loneliness. About feeling invisible. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he said only one thing. You lied to our children. That hurt more than anything else. The next morning, news vans lined the street. The kids watched silently from the window. I realized then that no matter what happened next, divorce, loss of career, public disgrace, this moment would define how they remembered me. Not as a doctor, not as a mother, but as a liar. After the gala, the house stopped feeling like a home. It became a place where the truth echoed off every wall, where silence pressed in from all sides, where even breathing felt loud. Nick didn't shout. He didn't insult me. He didn't even ask why anymore. That hurt more than anything else. He moved into the guest room that same night. Quietly. Efficiently. Like a man closing a door he already knew he'd never open again. The kids noticed immediately. Maddie stopped talking to me unless she absolutely had to. When she did, her voice was polite but distant, like I was a teacher she didn't respect anymore. Will barely spoke at all. He answered questions without looking up, his eyes glued to his screen like it was safer to disappear into a game than face the woman who'd broken his world. I tried to explain myself to them once. I shouldn't have. I made mistakes, I said, sitting at the kitchen table, my hands clasped tightly together. But I still love you both. That hasn't changed. Maddie looked at me, really looked at me, and shook her head. That's not what hurts, she said quietly. What hurts is that you lied about who you were. I felt something inside my chest crack. Nick didn't interfere. He let the kids speak. He always respected their voices. I used to admire that about him. Now it reminded me of everything I'd lost. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. No dramatic confrontation. No last attempt to reconcile. Just documents.
Cold. Precise.
Final. Nick sat across from me at the dining table while I read them. Primary custody to him. The house to him. Most of the assets to him. I didn't argue. What leverage did I have left? I signed my name, each stroke of the pen feeling heavier than the last. 16 years of marriage reduced to ink and signatures. When I handed the papers back, Nick nodded once. That's for the best, he said. Not cruelly, just honestly. I moved out the following week. A small apartment across town. 1 bedroom. Thin walls. Furniture that echoed when I set things down. The kind of place that feels temporary even when it's all you have. The hospital suspended me officially not long after. Colleagues who once praised my work suddenly didn't return my calls. Emails went unanswered. Invitations disappeared. I became something people whispered about. The medical board hearing was worse than I imagined. They didn't yell. They didn't shame me. They asked questions. Calm, devastating questions. Did I misuse my professional standing? Did I falsify information? Did I engage in conduct unbecoming of my role? Yes, I said to all of it. When they revoked my license, I felt nothing. Shock had already burned itself out. What remained was emptiness. Medicine had been my identity for so long that losing it felt like losing a limb. Except this time, it was my own fault. The media didn't let it go. Headlines reduced my life to a scandal. Doctors behaving badly. Ethics failure. Love party ring. People who didn't know me had opinions about me. Strangers dissected my choices like entertainment. Nick shielded the kids as best he could. I could see it during supervised visits, the way he stood nearby, calm but alert. Protective. They felt safer with him. That truth hurt more than any punishment. Months passed. The calls from Maddie became shorter. The visits less frequent. Will started canceling altogether. I told myself they needed time. But time doesn't fix betrayal. One afternoon, during one of our rare visits, Will finally looked up at me. Why didn't you just talk to Dad? He asked. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound selfish. Because talking wouldn't have given me the excitement I wanted. Because honesty wouldn't have fed my ego. Because secrecy felt easier than effort. But I didn't say that. I just said, I was wrong. It wasn't enough. It never would be. Owen tried to contact me once. I ignored it. Alexis was arrested months later. When I heard she'd been sentenced, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt foolish for ever believing she was anything more than someone selling validation to broken people like me. Everyone involved tried to distance themselves. Everyone claimed manipulation. But manipulation only works when you want what's being offered. And I had wanted it. 3 months after the divorce, Nick agreed to meet me. We sat on a park bench, the same one he used to bring the kids to on Sundays. The sun was out. Families passed by, laughing, living ordinary lives untouched by scandal. Nick looked different. Tired, yes. But lighter. Like he'd put down a burden he'd been carrying alone for too long. I looked like a shadow of myself. I'm sorry, I said. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know, he replied calmly. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He looked at me then, his eyes steady. That's the problem, he said. You didn't think far at all. I told him I was scared. That I'd lost everything. You lost the things you gambled with, he said. That sentence followed me home. It still does. I asked if he hated me.
No, he said.
I just don't trust you. And I don't think I ever could again. That was worse than hate. Hate still carries emotion. This was final. When I asked about the kids, his voice softened. They're in therapy. They're angry. But they're okay. That was his priority. Always had been. Not revenge. Not humiliation.
Them.
That was when the truth finally settled in. I hadn't just destroyed a marriage. I damaged my children's sense of safety. I taught them that the person they trusted most could lie without hesitation. Months later, Maddie packed for college. I stood in Nick's driveway, watching her load boxes into his car. She hugged him tightly. She hugged me politely. I didn't blame her. I stood there, watching the life I once had moved forward without me. And for the first time, I didn't justify anything. I didn't blame stress. I didn't blame boredom. I didn't blame Nick. I made the choices. And I live with them. People ask me now if I regret the affair. That question misses the point. I regret the lies. I regret the arrogance. I regret believing I was immune to consequences. Most of all, I regret hurting the only people who loved me without conditions. There is no redemption arc here. No dramatic forgiveness. Just a woman learning. Too late, that excitement fades, secrecy rots, and the things you think will save you can be the very things that destroy you. And that sometimes, losing everything is the only lesson strong enough to finally tell you the truth.